You give them the smile they are waiting for, perfect, polite, but completely empty. It feels automatic now, like you're just going through the motions. You tilt your head, you raise your eyebrows, you nod at the right times. From the outside, you seem present, calm, maybe even happy. But on the inside, you feel like a ghost, watching yourself speak, watching yourself move, while your real thoughts are screaming in silence. None of it feels real. It's like you're playing a part in someone else's movie, reading lines you didn't choose, acting in scenes you don't believe in. You've gotten good at pretending. You know how to look like you care, how to act like you're listening, how to keep up the conversation. You blend in, not because it's who you are, but because it's easier than explaining why you feel so disconnected. They think you're friendly, polite, normal. But what they're really seeing is a version of you built to make them comfortable, not the real you, the one hidden deep behind the mask. And inside, something starts to fade. Not all at once, but slowly, like your sense of self is getting smaller every day. You start to forget what it felt like to speak honestly, to be fully seen, to feel alive in your own skin. The praise you get doesn't feel good, it feels strange, because it's not meant for the real you. It's meant for the role you're playing. And the longer you keep performing, the more distant you feel from your own life. Until finally, a quiet question keeps coming back, louder each time. If this is who they think I am, then who am I, really? As time passes, your silence slowly turns into protection. You stop speaking, not because your mind is empty, but because you've realized most people aren't ready for what lives in your thoughts. They want light conversation, surface-level talk, things that are easy to agree with. But your mind goes deeper. You bring truths that shake people, not comfort them. You notice that when you speak with real honesty, the room gets quiet, not out of respect, but discomfort. So you start holding back. You shrink your voice. You tell yourself it's easier this way, safer. You begin adjusting your words, softening your edges. You become someone easier to digest, someone who doesn't make waves. You talk about the small things, the safe things. You say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You laugh at things that don't feel funny. And not because you're pretending, but because showing your full truth feels like a risk that no one is willing to take with you. Being yourself starts to feel like a burden, too heavy for the world around you to carry. So you carry it alone. And that's where the real conflict begins. We live in a world that praises deep thinkers, bold voices, and strong minds, until one of them shows up in the flesh. Because real intelligence doesn't just impress people, it unsettles them. It asks hard questions. It reveals uncomfortable truths. It doesn't follow the script, it rewrites it. And people don't always want that. They say they want awareness, but what they really crave is comfort. They say they want growth, but they cling to routine. So instead of facing their reflection, they turn away. They choose noise over clarity, distraction over honesty, sleep over awakening. You begin to realize that depth can be dangerous. Not in the way fire burns, but in how it unsettles the air. People say they want realness, but when you speak with raw honesty, you see it in their eyes, the shift, the discomfort, the slow retreat. You learn that truth, when not sugar-coated, doesn't bring people closer. It often drives them away. Your honesty doesn't heal, it divides. And every time you speak from the soul, it feels like you're building a bridge, hoping someone will cross. But instead, they step back, unsure of how to meet you there. Being awake in a world that runs on autopilot is not a gift, it's a weight. You walk through life seeing things others ignore. You notice the cracks behind the smiles, the meaning buried beneath the noise. You try to keep it simple, to meet people where they are, but your mind lives in another dimension, one where small talk feels like static and the truth is too loud to ignore. You're not trying to be special. You're not chasing attention. You're just trying to be real in a world that finds realness too intense. And slowly, that gap grows. You're surrounded by people, but you feel cut off, like you're separated by a sheet of glass no one else can see. They laugh together while you're stuck analyzing the silence between their words. They find joy in moments that feel like empty echoes to you. You long for someone who sees the world the way you do, someone who doesn't flinch when you speak the truth, someone who doesn't fade when conversations go deeper. But that person never seems to come. So you float further out, still hoping, still watching, still waiting, alone, not by choice, but by design. And so, the question creeps back in like a soft echo you can't escape. Is it me? Am I the one who's too much, too strange, too out of place? For a moment, you begin to wonder if something is wrong with you, if your inability to blend in means you're broken in some invisible way. But the truth is, you're not broken. You're just rare. And the world has a long history of confusing rarity with flaw. People are quick to label what they don't understand. When something doesn't fit the mold, they don't question the mold, they question the thing that stands apart from it. You don't carry the weight of superiority. What you carry is the quiet ache of being deeply aware in a world that often thrives on avoidance. It's not your mind that isolates you, it's your ability to see what others refuse to look at. The burden isn't your intelligence, it's your emotional clarity. You notice the inconsistencies in people's words, the gaps in their smiles, the weight behind their laughter. And you don't point it out to be cruel. You're not here to tear anything down. But your very presence unsettles things. Not because you demand change, but because your truth shines a light into the dark corners people would rather leave untouched. They don't avoid you because you're arrogant. They avoid you because you force them to feel things they've spent years numbing. They want safe conversations, predictable patterns, validation without challenge. But you ask questions that twist the narrative. You challenge the structure. You don't play along just to keep the peace. You speak what you see, even when it's uncomfortable. To them, you're not a companion, you're a disruption. A beautiful disruption. A necessary storm in a world that worships calm at any cost. Even Schopenhauer saw this. He never wrote to entertain the masses. His words were not made to please, they were made to pierce. He didn't chase applause. He wrote for those few souls who could sit with truth, even when it hurt. He understood that clarity comes with a price. That the clearer you see, the more isolated the path becomes. But he also knew something else. Those who walk that path alone are often the ones who carry the torch forward for everyone else. In a world obsessed with sameness, where fitting in is prized more than thinking deeply, the independent mind is seen as dangerous. Not because it spreads chaos, but because it resists blind obedience. The thinker becomes the outlier, not because they defy truth, but because they chase it to places most are too afraid to go. In classrooms, asking why too often earns you a reputation for being disruptive. In office meetings, offering insight beyond the script makes you a problem to be managed. In conversations with friends, offering raw truth instead of polite fiction makes you too much, too heavy, too intense. So over time, the thinker retreats. Not out of arrogance, but exhaustion. They shrink themselves, fold their edges, and dim their light to make others comfortable. They learn to nod instead of speak. Smile instead of question. Hide instead of shine. But the mind never obeys those limits. It spins relentlessly. It breaks apart ideas, unearths contradictions, sees what others overlook, and all that awareness, without expression, begins to ache. It becomes a quiet suffering. A longing not for attention, but for connection. Not for validation, but for resonance. Because while the world offers distraction, the thinker craves depth. While others float on the surface, they yearn to dive. But everywhere they turn, they're told to stay shallow. And so, a quiet loneliness begins to bloom. It's not just the ache of being misunderstood, it's the deeper sorrow of watching a world sleepwalk while your eyes are painfully open. It's seeing beauty in chaos, meaning in silence, and truth in places others avoid. The thinker doesn't want to be special. They just want to feel less alone. But instead, they carry this invisible weight through rooms that feel too loud and minds that feel too far away. Here lies the cruel irony. Society needs these minds desperately. It builds its future on the backs of the visionaries it once ignored. It quotes the philosophers it would have ridiculed in their time. It worships the products of original thought while rejecting those who still think originally. The thinker is celebrated after death but criticized while alive. Innovation is praised as long as it doesn't question power. Authenticity is marketed, but punished when it's lived. So thinkers learn to mask themselves, to become palatable, to wear watered-down versions of their own truths. They learn to survive by pretending, to protect themselves from a world that mistakes depth for danger. But in doing so, something sacred is lost. A voice goes quiet, a light goes dim, and humanity loses a chance to see itself more clearly, because the thinker, in their rawest form, is not a threat, they are a mirror. They reflect what is hidden, denied, or forgotten. And mirrors are hard to face when you're not ready to see. So society turns away, calls them strange, calls them arrogant, calls them wrong, when in truth, they are simply awake. They do not seek to lead or follow. They seek to understand. And in a world that fears understanding, that alone is enough to make them dangerous. So you start wearing a mask. Not out of deception, but protection. You begin playing the part, laughing when expected, nodding when it's polite, biting your tongue when your thoughts grow too sharp for the room. Not because you've lost your edge, but because you know what happens when you show it. When you speak with depth, it unsettles. When you question too much, they say you're difficult. When you refuse to lie, they call you strange. So eventually, you go quiet, not because you've run out of things to say, but because you've learned that most people aren't ready to hear them. This is what Schopenhauer understood long before modern minds could measure it. He didn't write to charm. He didn't decorate his truth in comforting lies. He saw the world clearly, and what he saw often led him into isolation. But that isolation wasn't weakness. It was refuge. He realized that truth offends, and insight isolates. And he accepted it. Not bitterly, but honestly. He knew the herd needs harmony, not honesty. It doesn't want your questions, it wants your silence. So if you refuse to dull yourself to fit in, you're not being difficult. You're just refusing to die while still alive. Most people don't understand this exile. They confuse your withdrawal for arrogance. They think your silence is ego. But you know better. You've simply grown tired of shrinking to fit places never meant for you. You've watched how the crowd rewards those who play the part and punishes those who break the script. And at some point, you stop asking to be understood. You stop reaching for resonance in places that echo back emptiness. You realize the thinker doesn't belong in the center of the room, they belong at the edge, where clarity lives. Schopenhauer called this clarity a curse and a gift. He believed the world runs not on reason, but on a blind, restless force he called the will. And once you see that force clearly, once you stop being its puppet, you become something dangerous, aware. You stop chasing approval. You stop needing the noise. You begin to see through the masks others wear, even when they don't know they're wearing them. And that awareness distances you, but it also frees you. Modern psychology is only now catching up to this truth. The deeper the mind, the harder it is to find resonance. Not because you think you're above others, but because your thoughts come from places they haven't visited yet. You speak in layers. You feel in echoes. You live in nuance. And the world, addicted to quick takes and shallow answers, has no language for that. So instead of being celebrated, you're told to tone it down. Be easier. Be lighter. Be less. But here's what they don't realize. You weren't born to be easy. You were born to see. You weren't built for small talk and surface smiles. You were built for the kind of truth that shakes foundations. And yes, that kind of truth comes with silence. It comes with solitude. It comes with a deep, aching awareness that few will ever truly get you. But that doesn't make you broken. That makes you rare. So to those who carry this weight, to the quiet minds hiding sharp truths inside soft eyes, your withdrawal is not failure. Your silence is not defeat. It's self-preservation. It's proof that you still hear your own thoughts in a world screaming for distraction. Keep thinking. Keep seeing. Keep being misunderstood. Because you weren't meant to be comfortable. You were meant to be awake.